This meeting to order. We're here for gather and share information regarding the properties of Perk Canyon. Let me see if I have anything else official there. The Canyon Edition land use, and you haven't. If you picked it up already, there's an agenda. I'll just share with you our goals this evening. I think some folks are still under the impression we're making decisions. That is not the main purpose tonight. We are not making decisions tonight. Our first goal was to help educate the BOCC on the issues. I know for some of you this has been an ongoing issue. For the board it has not been ongoing because we're all new. So we are here primarily to get the board first-hand information on the survey and to hear from some of the property owners there, to hear what's going on there and what's been going on. Second is to share the findings of the survey with the local landowners and the board. So we have Mr. Stratton here tonight, and we're going to hear from him on this survey that has just been completed. You have a small version as a handout. There's a large version on the podium, on the railing here if you need it. And we have one blown up here that we can talk about. So when we get to the part tonight where you're speaking, where you have a chance to speak as the public, if you live in the area, you might feel free to come up in here and speak. And if you want to point out which property is yours or things like that, I'm sorry we have a wall between us. That was not by design. This is the only big room in the courthouse that was available. So our third goal after hearing from the surveyor, our third goal was to let the board hear goals, concerns, and interests of everybody who lives in that area regarding the survey, and just, I'm aware that there have been some long-standing questions, concerns, and issues in the area. This is a chance for us to hear firsthand from some of you firsthand. We've heard from some of you, but not all of you. The last thing I would say this evening is we are going to follow this agenda pretty strictly. We'll ask you, it's property stuff, so people can get emotional about that. I'm going to ask you that we need to keep it civil. There will be speaking time limits. If time allows, we'll allow for additional speaking, but we want to get as many of you that want to speak tonight as we can. We'll start with the folks who actually live in the area or own property in the area in question. And then if others want to make public comments, we will do that as well. So that's our goals of the meeting. The very first thing I wanted to do this evening was have Mr. Stratton share the background of the work and the findings of the survey that they've been doing there. And then I want to be specific about the questions. After Mr. Stratton has spoken, if you have a question of clarification, something he said that wasn't quite clear, something that is short and simple like that, we will ask for those questions. If it is short, I'll ask Mr. Stratton if he's comfortable with that. He feels like he can answer that. We'll have him go ahead and let him do that. If it's a longer question or it involves an opinion or a complicated answer, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and state your question. We'll record it, and then the county will decide if that's pertinent to our discussions and our future decisions and pass those along to him. So that goal is not to put Mr. Stratton on the stand, which is weird that we're in a courtroom today, okay? But our goal is not to put you on the stand and grill you with a lot of complex questions. But if you do have a clarification question, go ahead and ask that tonight. Again, not his opinions, but clarification on the things he's about to present. The last thing we will do this evening will be public input. Again, 5-minute limit. We'll be hearing from, starting with those folks who own property and or live in that immediate neighborhood, in that area that we're talking about, and then others. And if there is more time afterwards and we have anything else, we'll see if we can do a second round of talking. But as it says on the agenda, the last thing we'll do is the Board of Commissioners throughout this process, and at the end we'll be asking questions, maybe from some of you property owners, maybe from Mr. Stratton, but we're just trying to get a clarification on who wants what, who's where, what's what, and we won't be making any decisions tonight. That wouldn't be fair. We're just trying to gather the information. So bear with us. Some of you are very frustrating. You've been in the process for a while. We haven't. We're new to that, and we're trying to see what we can do to bring this thing forward, get some kind of resolution, okay? So I'm gonna ask Mr. Stratton if he would come on up and share with us. You can use that, whatever you need, and share with the board, if you wanna stand over to the side where you kind of face everybody, that'd be great.
So my name's Rob Stratton. I'm the county surveyor, and I was asked by the Board of Commissioners 2 years ago now to go out here and identify some of the right-of-ways here in Canyon Edition. Primarily at the time, they were concerned down, this isn't, I don't know if that was gonna work or not. I think it's gonna give you their side. First, I asked just to figure out the right-of-way of Brookside Avenue and figure out where that was. There was another surveyor they had that was previously working on some of the stuff up here on these right-of-ways, but the company had a surveyor that worked for him. The surveyor left the company, so they were unable to complete the project, so they asked me then to expand in and look at some of these areas here too. The primary goal when we look at a survey is to determine, one, where were the boundaries originally created, and two, is what has happened since then that might influence the boundaries. And in this case, this plat was originally done back in, it's been a while since I've looked at the actual details here, so I can't remember. 1906 was when the plat of Canyon Edition was done. In doing research and looking what other surveyors have found in the past, what I was able to find, really the only identifying feature out there that can get you kind of oriented to where that original plat was is what's left of determining where the railroad is on the one end. Really isn't anything, there were no monuments that we'd be able to identify back from the original plat that were set or anything like that. So there wasn't a lot of information to get back to where did the original grantor intend the boundaries to be when they created the property. Since that time, there has been a variety of surveys that have happened in the area. One of the first ones that came through that may identify is the Bureau of Land Management came through, and this line here is what we refer to as, if you're familiar, the ground around here was originally broken into sections, square miles, and this is a division that breaks down part of that section line. And there's a monument down here that's referred to what we call as the 16th corner. The BLM went through and established this 16th corner, and it shows up on the original plat. What we don't know is if that monument is the same place that they thought it was when they did the original plat. One of the things that when we looked at that and started checking, the distance from this monument up to what I've identified as the railroad right-of-way is about 30 feet longer than what the plat shows. So probably this was not where whoever did the plat originally thought that monument was. We don't know that relationship. But that somewhat fixes this line. There's some other monuments that will get there further out that help fix that line. But that established this line in here. And with that 30 feet in there, the question is how does that get adapted? I have found some of the surveys have been recorded. There's some evidence of stuff that wasn't recorded. Originally, there was a surveyor that came in. He held this monument, rotated this line, had about 30 feet of excess here, and he set the railroad right-of-way basically be in between these monuments right here that we found. But shifted the whole thing. That's about what that 30-foot gap is that you're seeing there. I don't think that's where the railroad was. Of course, the railroad tracks are gone now, so trying to identify where the railroad was a challenge of its own. I talked to some of the landowners out there, and there was some evidence that I feel pretty good that I know where the right-of-way is. But we can get through that as we go through a little bit further here. The next survey that showed up was one over here that was actually out of the plat, but they identified, they surveyed this line was the same line that the BLM had determined. And they established a line for the railroad right-of-way, which comes in right here and is extended with this dashed line, which I think is a pretty good representation of the railroad. That's what I determined was probably the best evidence of it. After that, there was also a survey that I don't know, I don't have a copy of it, but we found monuments here that appear that what they were based on was trying to hold this corner right here with the section line and the railroad. And then they went out, and I think this line here is really the edge of that lot right there based on at least what I've got mapped here. And what I've got shown for lots in here is somewhat more for discussion purposes than an absolute opinion at this point, and we'll kind of go through that as we got here. But, so that represented a shift. Instead of holding this monument, they held up here, and that shifted everything this way about 30 feet. Now, there's been another surveyor here that is out of Wallace, worked here for a long time. He's done a number of surveys in this area, and the lines I'm showing here for the lots are primarily based on his surveys. Like I said, it's not a final decision, it's just mostly for discussion purposes. You gotta be able to see something to relate how things relate. What appears that he did was basically held this monument, but then what he did is shifted everything up perpendicular to the railroad to try to take up. So if you got a triangle here that's about 30 feet by 30 feet by 30 feet, this person went one way, then it shifted 30 feet this way, and then it went this way, which created a gap. Again, almost 30 feet this way. So that's, in a nutshell, that's the crux of the problem, is there have been different interpretations out here. Trying to get back to what the original grantor, when they did the plat here, there isn't sufficient evidence to get there. So some of these lines are somewhat ambiguous. And when they're ambiguous, that gives a little bit of flexibility that people can basically come up to an agreement of what works for everybody. And I've somewhat encouraged the county that they should consider this and talk to the landowners, see if they can work out an agreement to see what benefits the different owners, because there are discrepancies. We can't get to a point that says this is definitely where your property line was as it was originally created. So in a nutshell, that's what we're getting down to is there's some discrepancies, there's been some interpretations, there's been some things built based on some of those interpretations, and how do we protect the interests of the people out there? One of the things you have out here, the railroad right-of-way itself, I'm not real clear on who the ownership of that actually belongs right now, if the railroad still holds ownership. I've seen a deed, I think it's possible that maybe Hecla owns it, but it's not clear. Even that deed wasn't clear what all they got on it. So that's an ownership that's kind of fixed in there. But beyond that, some of these things have some flexibility. They're just like say, it's not something I can come in and say your corner is definitely here, this is what you own. It's just got some variance in there. So in a nutshell, that's kind of how we got to this point. We've mapped some things in here. We've shown relational lines. On here, I've got a line through here, which I think is actually a true railroad right-of-way. The heavier line on the top is what was based on the local surveyor that did a lot of the work out here. His name's Chris Ball. He established that line for what he did. I'm pretty sure it doesn't fit the railroad right-of-way real good, but like I said, there's been a variety of improvements. There's been a number of decisions that he made on his surveys that for interior markers. One of the things we consider when we do surveying is what has happened before us, and people have a right to try to rely on what surveyors have done before us. So as much as possible, trying to recognize the interests from these various surveys that people might have. So since Chris Ball has done most of the work in here, I've used that for the basis of my line work, but I think there's other interests out there that have some valid concerns too. There's also some things that because landowners own multiple parcels out here and some of the ways they developed and roads weren't open, that there's some improvements and stuff that are either questionably maybe in right-of-way or definitely in right-of-way. But some of those things, I know that's what the county's trying to determine is how can we get this resolved so that hopefully nobody's an outright loser, hopefully everybody's in a win-win situation somewhere if they can come up with something. That's kind of in a brief nutshell.
Okay. So if you have a question now, again, if it's short answer clarification question, please ask it. If it's a longer answer, Sydney's gonna record that for us and we'll determine if, we won't answer those tonight. We'll give those to Mr. Stratton as needed by the board. Anybody with clarification? Yes, Mr. Lynn.
Those 2 points you got on my property.
These ones over here?
Yeah, that was bank survey. I had him survey my property.
Okay. I think I talked to you and you said you thought she had somebody surveyed, but you weren't sure who you talked to.
I had, then there was bank survey, then another surveyor had moved my garage away, so
Yeah.
I hired another surveyor.
Okay.
And he said he'd do it, he looked things over and then came up with you want a good survey, it'll cost me $150,000, so I thought maybe I could get it.
You got enough of these problems, but this was actually, this was actually a bank survey, this one here that had a different shift on things. This is the bank survey over here, which I think is actually probably, just looking at it from a pure surveyor standpoint, I think that's the best survey of the bunch there. But like I say, there's definitely interest in established by other ones, and when things are ambiguous and surveyors value, sometimes you make a decision and you have to kind of go with what you got based on the evidence you had, so.
Okay. Other questions, clarification, Mr. Beaner?
Would it help any, there's a telephone line poles that used to run down that alley, Idaho, Montana Tower.
Alley, this alley?
Yep. My deed is actually based off that power line, which gives you a distance from that power line, center line to the power line, my property line, out to the railroad right of way. I presented this to the roads department, don't know if they told you that or not.
I know where I got specific, now this is your deed for over here?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't look at that deed as closely, they have seen some brief stuff in it. Mostly where banks had surveyed that, I've just been basing on a bank survey over, because it was kind of off of what we're looking at. So.
But 100% know where that line was.
And that's the power line out here.
It's based off.
Yeah, I'd have to see what the deed reads like, because, one of the things is, when was the power line put in relation to everything else?
At least 1970. At least 1970,
17, okay.
not long after that plan.
Okay. Good. Mrs. Beaner?
When you said that when BLM came in, there was a 30-foot shift, like, what direction compared to the original plat? I just wasn't.
So they established this monument down here, which is referred to as the 16th corner. The plat distance from that corner up to the railroad right of way physically is about 30 feet longer than what they showed on the plat. And that's where, like I say, so you take that and you just apply it outright, just holding this and rotating this way, you end up over here. If you shift up over in here, you get a shift this way, or like say what Chris Fall, as near as I can tell, did is kind of held that alignment and then pushed it up to what he was considering a railroad here, which I'm not real sure how we established the railroad on this survey. I couldn't get anything clear on that.
So does the, cause you then, sorry, second part of the question.
Continue.
So you did say that you're fairly comfortable with like where the railroad right of way is?
Primarily, that is based on what banks did over here. I think you have a pretty good alignment. It gets a little more ambiguous here as to what happened. It's like this survey here that banks did goes back to 95, and even at that time the tracks must have been gone for him to have a shift like that, because I don't think the railroad was clear down here.
The tracks were gone, but the railroad, or the bed wasn't.
That's why I'm not quite sure how with the bed there, you would have thought that he would use that to shake it out. But unfortunately, when you're working with old surveys, you have the information on the survey, and that's
Yeah.
mostly it,
So is there like an actual legal okay, in my mind, that's not a survey line. You said that the BLM thing, when they did it, it makes the plat, the original subdivision plat, be about 30 feet longer?
Where this monument is in relation to the railroad is about 30 feet long. I think that's a pretty good indication that that's not in the same location as it was when they determined where the plat was originally. But there's no information that I've been able to find other than the railroad that can fix where the original plat was, and that really fixes it one way, it doesn't fix you this way at all.
But does that make sense for you? I'm sorry, was somebody else raising behind? I can wait.
Let me go on around and come back
Okay.
around. If we had, somebody else was waving, anybody else with a question? Yeah, Joe.
So, you're tying everything to your 16th there, I presume, is that on the section line?
It is a quarter section line. The actual section line would be a quarter mile this way from that.
Okay,
And then there's a line that would go perpendicular to this line through here, which is what we refer to as the center section line, north and south.
Have you looked at the original field notes when it was surveyed probably in 1895? They should have made it, they
The
would have
BLM did a complete retracement of the section, and everything I saw in it looked reasonable. They set a whole variety of alignments through here. So it looked like a reasonable retracement. What we don't know is if somebody established this back in 1910, what they did to establish that back in 1910. Because to survey this section correctly, you're up and over the range and into the next canyon over, and it's going around for a mile in this area can be challenging. So a lot of surveyors took shortcuts. And
But in the
when they
ri-
take shortcuts, it's impossible to say what that shortcut was without evidence of it.
in the original field notes, they would have made a call on where the railroad was,
If the railroad was in when. they-
if it was there.
Yeah. Then some of that is what.
That'd be
came
something to
first.
check on.
And the other thing is because this is a quarter mile away from what they did on the original notes, because the line that would run then would have been a quarter mile over here, half mile north, 3/4 mile. They were going around a block that was much bigger, and they didn't put those interior lines at that point. Somebody, a private surveyor would have done that.
Yeah, but even farther up, somewhere wherever the section line would have crossed, they would have made a call on if the railroad road
Yeah,
was there.
if the railroad was there.
And then that would give you something to go from there. To maybe
Yeah,
get
it's,
the original establishment where
But
the
that still
railroad
doesn't
was.
help solve what the local surveyor thought this monument was at the time. That could help, trying to figure out where the railroad right of way is, still going back to what I can find from the bid, which is now gone, is the strongest evidence I was able to find, which, like I say, I feel pretty good at here, I think I'm within 2 or 3 feet, but, like I said, there just isn't anything real definitive out there to pin it down. I'd be almost inclined, I think right now what I'm doing at this line I've got right here, if I remember right, is just an extension of this line. This line is within a couple of feet, and I think that probably is somewhat plausible.
All right, Joe? Anybody else with a clarification question? Mindy, did you have another one?
Yeah, I'm still back to trying to figure out the original plat and you feeling comfortable where the railroad is, cause I know when you look at the original plat, the, back by where the little BLM marker is, that lot that's just adjacent to it was not a 40 by 100 lot. It was narrowed down and cut off at the back corner of it. And then also the little, just teeny tiny triangle above the BLM thing.
You're talking about like this lot right here?
Yeah, that
Or
lot,
this lot right here?
both of them. The first one you pointed at on the
Okay.
original plat, that wasn't a 40 by 100 lot. It was nicked off at the
Yeah.
corner.
So what happened there is, like I say, all the main lines I'm showing on here right now are based on what Chris Falls did out here.
Right.
And what he basically did was held that line of everything here, and then he shifted it up this way. And then what he did is these lot lines, he extended them out. Because he shifted it this way, it pulled this line away from here, so then he just extended those lines out, which is a reasonable thing for you to do to, you're still trying to get back to what was the original controlling line there. So if there's any deficiencies or excess, you have to correct.
So when it says they extended it to the quarter section marker when BLM did it, that's what they're talking about. They just
Well,
extended the.
BLM just surveyed this line and said this. Chris Paul actually took and said, okay, we're just gonna extend these lines out here to, because the original plat line, based on, if you held what Chris Paul did over here, the original plat line would be about 20 feet in here.
Right, okay,
And so when he did that 20 feet, he extended that out.
okay.
And I think he said that even on his survey, he clarified that, but that would be a normal thing to do in that situation.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Stratton before we move to comments from the property owner? Seeing none. Mr. Stratton? Okay. So, I'm gonna ask, first of all, for folks who, live in, or own property in the area that we're talking about, if you, by raise of hand, if you want to speak, we'll, do a 5-minute time limit, and then we will politely help you stop if you haven't stopped at 5 minutes. We'll let everybody who wants to share that has property lives, and then we will allow comments from folks who are outside that area that if they have something they feel is pertinent to add to the discussion today. So I'm going to ask for volunteers. Does anybody want to share? And what we're after is, I liked how our surveyor put it here a few minutes ago. what benefits each owner? What are your concerns? What are your thoughts after seeing this? What solutions, and just, you know, anything you want to share in that way? Property owners?
Yeah, so I'm David Patrick, 104 Tomsky.
104?
Yep, so my garage currently sits in the middle of what was supposed to be F Street. Couple things I wanna ask about, with this encroachment, prior to 2017, was there any work done to fix that? Records I could find start about 2017 that this was becoming a problem when this house and garage was built in the 80s. And I'm just, curious.
Yeah, we didn't note the question, I'll have to look it
No,
up.
that's fine, that's
Yeah.
fine.
I don't know the answer to that, I wasn't present.
Me neither. And the other thing, is F Street still shown as not, being part of the Idaho Transportation, ITD map? Because prior it wasn't shown as being there, it's not maintained, there's no funding for it, et cetera.
Is that a long answer, Jessica?
That's a short answer, it is
You
not
would-
on the map.
It is not on the
So
map.
it does not belong to ITD, right? It's not on ITD.
The Shoshone County is not being
Gotcha.
reimbursed currently for highway use or revenue,
Right.
for that street, correct?
Okay. So it's not even on the county road list, which is the same thing then?
Correct.
Okay. And back in 21, when this was happening, and we're just trying to get information since we're new to here, only just a little over a year.
Welcome.
Yes, it's a good one.
A decision was made that, since it's not an open highway, that it's a discretionary encroachment with this stuff. I just wanna know if something has changed in that respect. And, cause what I'm looking for is I wanna solve the issue with that, being there. And see if there's something we can do about remedying that, being that street and that alley that's supposedly there.
Okay, do you have those down? Okay, make sure I go slow enough that the poor folks trying to get all this written down, get it. Okay, any other comments or questions for you at this time? All right, other landowners, property owners in the area, wanna make a comment or question? Mr. Wiener?
I'm bringing up the highway district, highway map, does that fit the code of Fairfield County road map?
We can note your question, I don't have an answer for you.
We went through the to get off this road 2 years ago.
What year was that, Mr. Wiener?
Really? And I'm speaking of Brookside Development right now.
The petition was denied in May of 21.
21, it was legal, hearing, both prosecuting attorneys sat through each hearing. It was decided then not to vacate the property, nothing has changed, except for you guys who are in the office, but the evidence is still the same. I've spoke to you guys before, well, maybe not you guys before this, to get water line back to my our Brookside Development's property, fast its way through that garage. And 3 years ago, the estimated cost to the water district, what they've done, was $17,000. Now, it's doubled or tripled that cost, you guys all know it went up. And I'm still sitting here fighting to get water back there. We offered to, move the road up toward our wall, put a 40-foot road in, that was denied by the past owners
And county.
and the county. Things have been done behind closed doors on this, we have emails. The actual start of the vacation process was actually done before the public hearing was even scheduled. The county had agreed to giving up the street for storage, snow storage area. Never done in an open meeting. There's there's so many things that went wrong on doing this that it's unbelievable. In the meantime, Brookside Development incurred cost, besides now the water line, extra attorney's fees to stop this from happening. And I don't know what the answer is, but that's not the only thing, encroachments here, I will hand this to you. Any questions on it, that's why encroachments need to be taken care of. You guys are setting a precedent, how you're doing this, y'all know that this is all over the county. And what you guys do on this stuff is gonna, I believe, tie you to the rest of the stuff, other encroachments in this county. So I'm just asking, follow Idaho code. And, so you got something to go off of on the next thing that comes up. That's it for right now.
Thank you. Okay, other property owners, Mrs. Beamer.
I'm speaking as Mindy and Matt, not Brookside Development.
Mindy, I'm sorry, you're speaking as,
Mindy and Matt,
okay, I'm just trying to write my notes.
okay? And I'm mostly speaking because, like, I mean, the focus right now for Brookside is obviously F Street. My focus is the encroachment complaints that I filed in October of 2019 and had to refile in April of 21, even though they've been in the prosecuting attorney's office for a year at that point. You know, we had a property survey before we built. We recorded our survey. We have our surveys to show anybody that wants to look at them. So our information is open to everybody. I don't know what other surveys have been done out there. Would love to be able to look at them. But my biggest concern, like I said, is the encroachments. Part of it ties back to F Street. After the denial and the findings of facts, which if you go back and read to try to get the history, there's definite issues in the findings of facts from the hearing that are not correct. The prosecuting attorney wrote up that the county had obtained a preliminary survey of the subject area from Alta, but a year before the at least a year before the hearing, there were 2 legal descriptions and 2 legal maps for the vacate and a snow lot that were, I mean, they weren't recorded, but they were stamped, signed, and dated by Alta Engineering. So there was definitely a plan of things going on, which led to Brookside having to get their attorney. There's also, let's see, the board, well, I'm not gonna go into that part. They decided to do the denial. In the facts that were listed for the hearing, it said Jim Kaysen responded asserting that after review of the request, it was determined that the proposed portion of F Street has never been developed and or used as a public right-of-way. Furthermore, that proposed portion to be vacated does not leave any real property adjoining without access to a public right-of-way. Which, that's not a fact, it's actually a falsehood, because Jim, I think at the time, had worked maybe 2 years for the county. He told me their records only go back 10 years. We provided proof during the hearing in photographs and in testimony that F Street was being plowed, which is basically the reason that Glenn Cross put his garage there, because they came up Tomshe and plowed along F Street. So when he wanted to build his garage, he plunked it in the middle of F Street, so he had to drive into his garage. Pretty well easy made driveway. So, and this, again, goes back to the county. This was a permitted job after building permit, or after the building code was established, and the county let him do it. So, from someone who surveys and does setbacks before they build on them and that, there is a frustration level. That frustration level boiled a little bit when nothing had taken place for about 5 months after the denial of the vacate. Everything was still just stalling. And the attorney had sent a letter which generated a meeting between the then commissioners, at that meeting, the Tapmans and I believe Mr. Ludwig showed up for, because bear in mind at the hearing, the Tapmans were the only people that came. There was, nobody in the other area came to have a comment or anything else. This is the first I've seen with most people in the area. But that meeting, not a hearing, went in, the commissioners decided to tell them, like, you've got an encroachment and that, we're just not gonna worry about it right now. And from a meeting, they being, pardon me, it wasn't they, it was Mike Fitzgerald through an email, decided to do a finding of facts and conclusion of law from a meeting. And in that, Mike Fitzgerald just stated things as facts, like he said ITD Road doesn't show F Street as a road. Well, ITD map is just the stuff that the county reports to them. It's not, and it says, just for informational, don't hold, you know, it's not a legal thing. Public Works said that, or advised that it was not an open highway. Well, there's a garage sitting on it. It's not an open highway. There are photographs in that of it being an open highway, but that apparently in the hearing was not evidence enough. In the facts of finding that basically Mike Fitzgerald wrote up for the prosecuting attorney office, they listed that it was, let's see, the county's road list didn't list it. You're right, it's not been on there. I've asked for 3 years to have it put on, but there's also roads on there that aren't county roads. So I'm not really sure where the legality of what the county's road list is, cause if you're getting reimbursed by the state, you've got private property roads that you're turning in, and that's probably not a real good idea. So, I mean, that's basically the bulk of it, cause like I said, I think this is just gathering information, it's not detailed stuff, correct?
We're gathering information.
Thank you.
Other landowners in the area? If seeing none, other citizens that want to speak, and if you'd go ahead and state your name for the record.
Kirk McCollum. I've been tied to the valley for 63 years, 62. And past commissioners have set a precedent of things that weren't done exactly the right way. And now people are tied to that now because they had a band of clowns that did illegal stuff and the buggy system. That's why I voted for you too, because I wanted to see change. You ran on transparency, conservatism, and stuff that goes on like this is not conservatism. When people are allowed, can I go and build a house on a county road? If this is allowed to go on, I might as well, because it set precedent for other people. And you may not like to hear it, but that's the way it is. And, you know, the last 3 that were in here were the worst thing that ever happened to this valley. Yeah, Fitzgerald jumped ship, so they install a person that flips parties.
Let's try to keep it to it.
Well, but, you know, but that's true. And so, you know, if this is gonna allow it to go on, you're gonna run into other problems. Thank you.
Good point. Okay, other comments from other citizens? Yes, ma'am. Go ahead and
Hi.
state your name for the.
I'm Chris Bischoff. I just wanna back up the fact a few years ago that Beaners did approach the Tapmans to compromise, and they were real nice about it. And the reason I know this is because I tried to buy Brookside property from the Beaners. I was waiting because Matt wouldn't know the cost to bring a water line down, whether it was gonna go the long way around or what we thought would be the shorter way. And I waited and waited to see, and then Matt told me about the petition to vacate the road, and that would be make or break whether I'd buy the land or not. And it was denied, so I kinda waited, you know, months for fences to come down and things to happen, and nothing happened. I had to finally move on. But Matt and Mindy, they tried. Tapman's, you know, basically told them to go screw themselves. And I still can't believe this is going on to this day, and I know there's contention around this, but Beaners kind of seem to get a bad rap on this. the other thing is, I feel really bad for the new owners of this land to inherit this issue. Tapman's, they basically fenced off like another 1/4 acre of land, enjoyed it as their own, didn't pay taxes on it. Then the appeal happened, or the decision happened, they didn't appeal it, they put a for sale sign in the ground, they sold it, you probably paid a lot more money for land you don't even have rights to. This is nuts, and they're out of there. And I still to this day I don't know why there hasn't been something to fix this. You can't just fence off land and call it your own. And that the Tapmans sold the land, they sold land that they didn't even own, so they made a lot of money on this deal. It blows my mind that they were allowed to do this. And I don't think the lesson that we wanna set going forward is, well, first of all, surveys are pretty important, so make sure you're building on your own land. That's not the case in here, I understand, but we have more people moving here, and I'm all about surveying the land before you can start building on it. I guess that's all I wanted to add to it, but I just really wanna make the point that Beaners did go to Tapman's to try to fix this. And then they had, when they were told no, Matt lost a land sale. They had to hire a lawyer, so they're out a lot more money than just a little bit here and there. I don't think anybody's taken in the full scope of what Beaners lost out on. I know that the fix, probably the right thing to do, is super complicated and not what anybody wants to hear, but they do, whether you bristle at that idea or not, you're gonna have to consider maybe finally doing the right thing here. And I hope that the new owners, I hope that your real estate agent should have put some disclosure notes to the sale. You should go back and look, because I think maybe she didn't tell you what was happening, and she should have, because that was right in the middle of this time that during their petition got denied. I bet they put a for sale sign in within 30 days after that, and you probably don't know that, and looks like you kinda got a screw job, in my opinion. Anyway, thanks.
Thank you. Any other citizen? Yeah, Mr. Logan.
Yeah, those, lots on the back side of the alley. If I'm not mistaken, Billy White owned those for a while. And what I was understood was he sold them to, Glencross at the time, cause Steve White, lived where Beaner's garage is now, the big garage. And Mike, they gave that to where my field is. And then Mike moved off after the court shut down. And, I bought that property. And, I don't know where Steve went to, but he left too, and then what I understood, really didn't want those lots, so he sold them to Glencross. But I don't know that for sure, because, I wasn't in the loop.
Okay. Thank
But I
you.
talked to Billy White, thought it was the only way you could find out.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? In the back. Oh, Jan, and
Jan Bigdon. I just found out about this meeting yesterday, and I got it through Matt sending me the letter from Public Works. So my thinking was that this was a Public Works meeting, so some of my comments, which were quickly drafted, may not be appropriate, but you can tell.
would you mind coming up where I just having a hard time hearing you? And since you already informed me of your shower.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
So, I am a research analyst. I have a mind that's a lot like Ben's. Kind of think a lot of like, so my comments I'm opposed to the Public Works Department convening a meeting or quasi-hearing to solicit public input on encroachments in Canyon Addition or anywhere in the county because encroachments are illegal per Idaho Code 40-2319. The Idaho Appeals Court and the Idaho Supreme Court have both ruled on encroachments on roads, alleys, and rights of way. The Supreme Court, 1961, confirmed that a gas station had to remove its pumps, island, canopy, and signs that were installed in the 30s, 30 years before, because they encroached on merely a right-of-way, not a road. A garage, etc., built in the 80s on F Street is an illegal encroachment, and the county has no authority to permit its construction on a street held in trust for public use. Public opinion nor the county cannot enact policies that supersede statutes. From Idaho territorial road law in the late 1800s through today's road laws, all designated roads must be 50 feet wide unless otherwise specified. Shoshone County Ordinance 139 states in part, half streets shall not be permitted. That's 10-3-3. F Street cannot be reduced from its original 40-foot width. And I go on to cite case law, Kaiser versus City of Boise and Kleiber versus City of Idaho Falls are court cases that said you don't have any authority to allow an encroachment on a road, cause it's the public's road, not yours. And then, there's a few, one in particular is, Rich versus Verdict. The Supreme Court affirmed the district court's order that a property owner remove part of the gasoline station that encroached onto the 99-foot width of a public right-of-way. This result obtained despite the fact that the gas station had been located there for nearly 30 years. The county did not have the authority to issue the landowner a permit to build a garage or encroachment on F Street, even if it was constructed in the 1980s. And lastly, in my red ink here, you may not know, but Chris Ball has had his license revoked from disciplinary action from too many unsatisfied customers.
Thank
So
you.
whatever his surveys are, you might wanna take with a grain of salt.
I agree.
Thank you. And don't forget your glasses.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hickman. Any further discussion, comments from any other citizens?
Just two questions, if I can, to Mr. Stratton, if there
Well,
easily was.
Yeah, let me go through the five, I'm allowing everybody 5 minutes,
Okay.
and then we'll see if we have time for a couple more, but I'm sure we'll figure this out. Just wanna be sure, is there anybody that has not spoken? Okay, that wants to, alright, so Ms. Beaner, if you have short, questions for clarification, we can do that, if not, Sydney will write them down for us.
Okay, mainly, what I'm hearing from you is you're fairly comfortable with like your dotted line up by the highway?
Along the railroad right away?
Yeah, along the railroad right-of-way, that, I mean, is that comfortable to record a survey, or is that just comfortable to negotiate off to have a survey later recorded?
When I record a survey, what I'm doing is I'm offering an expert opinion. It's not, once I record a survey, it's not hard, fast, or anything. I could record a survey that said, I think that's the best evidence of the railroad from what I can tell. So I could record that. Now, if it went to court, my evidence as a professional has merit what they consider, but it's not, as a surveyor, we don't establish lines. What we do is we report the evidence that we found and conclusions became based on that.
And then if you're provided a copy of, the original deed for the short, cause I know the short plat that Banks did on our personal property, had two legal descriptions in them, which are, I mean, they're similar, but they are not the legal description of the entire area when it was bought. We were just pulling a piece out for my mother-in-law at the time. So if that has reference and lines to the center power line, and there's pole, and there's reference to railroad grade, I mean, that would be beneficial for you to read, to be able to check to.
I'd have to see it,
Okay.
it's hard to say without having seen it, so.
Okay,
Okay? Okay, at this point then, I'm gonna move on to, the county commissioners. Questions from the county commissioners for either, surveyor or for property owners. Questions of clarification, questions of, anything you wanna pursue to understand this better.
This time I don't have it, until I study this a bit.
Yeah, I'm gonna just, of course I have questions. Mr. Patrick, right? You don't have to answer the question, but were you aware of any of this as you bought into this property? Or are you aware of the history of this?
So we were told that this was a potential, but at the time in 21, maybe, I'd have to look at my thing, that it had been ruled that it wasn't an open highway, it did not show up on any county road maps and all this stuff, and it was ruled a discretionary encroachment. And that was, it's in this. And so, knew this would probably have to come back around, but I think there's a solvable solution.
Let me ask on that, do you have any ideas for solutions?
So we have a survey, we got the land area, we got the land mass, let's let you buy it.
Like to buy it? The county right away, you mean?
Yeah,
Okay,
and I can maybe help you,
okay,
let you run water line through there.
all right. Question for Mr. Beener, you said you had offered something to the Tatmans in the past about moving the road right away, or what, can I ask what you offered them, or
To run it, you see the section line?
would you mind showing me so I can?
The 16? They offered to put the road here, 40-foot road, in fact, it's on your 18-inch map, they actually drew it on, it's 50 feet. You come down through here, which you give me added cost, because the angle is, gonna be more pipe, and you turn it down, he said, no, just take your chances with the vacation here, is what I was doing.
So you were offering if the county were to move its road over in return for the property the garage is on?
Yes, that was before I incurred all, the Brookside Development incurred all the attorney's fees to fight this.
Okay, are you still interested in a solution?
I'm interested in a solution, but I think the Brookside Development needs to be made whole.
Okay, do you foresee any solution? Mr. Patrick mentioned one, what solution?
That is my solution, to make it whole, and I'm all for moving, I just make the Brookside Development whole, I got partners in this.
Okay, I'm not understanding what you might mean by make it whole.
Attorney's fees.
Attorney fees, okay. Okay, other commissioner, other questions?
What's the total attorney fees?
What's that?
What was the total attorney fees?
Over 10,000 and under 50.
Okay, Mr. Patrick, I'm just gonna ask again, you don't have to answer. What do you think of that original idea that they had a few years ago about the county moving its right of way over to the far side of your property in return for the property that you're currently sitting on? Sure, that's a fair answer, I'm just throwing that out, that there might be a
It's possible solution.
It's a possibility.
okay. Other questions? Public Works, do you have any questions for clarification of property owners or Mr. Stratton or?
Not this time.
Mrs. Beamer?
What about the rest of the encroachments that are on the complaint, or is this just pertaining to F Street?
My questions were pertaining to F Street, yeah.
Oh, okay,
That's,
cause there's like a whole list of, okay.
yeah, I'm kind of a one thing at a time guy. Thought I'd start with the little one and work up. So,
Well, that one might be one of the bigger ones, so that's why I wondered.
that was sarcasm.
Oh.
Doesn't work at my house either. Okay, seeing no further questions from the public, from the commission, I'm gonna have this meeting adjourned at this time. And the honorable security, do you want them using the elevator?
You can use the stairs or the elevator.
They can use the stairs or the elevator. Thank you very much. We're adjourned.
Yes, we-